Hi folks, welcome to the Love and Marriage videos to help you with the set text for the GCSE. I'm Dr. Haley. We're going to make a start going through the text with Epitaph to Claudia. So on every video in the series, we're going to look at the Latin, the English. We'll track vocabulary that you know from the language paper so you're getting more comfortable with matching the Latin and English together. And then we'll go through some of the effects that you can talk about if you are looking at this on a literature paper and if you're looking at it for essays and things like that. So this source is an epitaph. It's carved onto a funerary stele, so it's part of how a wife would be commemorated. And that's why I've chosen the image that I have, where we can see a husband and wife together. It would be really common for a Roman matron, a married woman, to be commemorated in this way by her husband. Marriage was seen as a really defining moment in a wealthy Roman woman's life. It's the moment where she stops being a girl and becomes a woman. And quite often we'll see a repeated theme of Roman women of this class being valued in terms of how positive they were as a wife, how good they were for their husband. We have no way of gauging whether this is a really accurate depiction of this woman, but we'll start to see that some of the informality of this epitaph makes it seem a little bit more sincere and authentic. Okay, so let's have a look at this together. Hospes, quod dico Paulum est, aster ac pergale, hic est sepulchrum haud pulchrum pulchrae feminae, nomen parentes nominarunt Claudia. So stranger, hospes. What I have to say is brief. Quod dico Paulum est. Dico and quod, we know. What and I say, you know those from the language paper. Est, you know from the language paper. Asta ac pergale. Per sorry. Stand still and read it. Per lege is read it through. You know lege from the language paper. It's from Lego, I read, and per is through. So we've just shoved together two words you already know. Hic est, this is, sepulchrum. And we get the English word sepulchre. So this is the tomb. Pulchrum pulchrae. It's a beautiful tomb and of a beautiful woman because we have pulchrae and feminae. You know that pulchrae and feminae go together because they both have a genitive singular AE ending. So lots of skills that you have built up from the language paper can help you with this little passage. So where it says her parents gave her the name Claudia, we have nomen parentes nominarunt Claudiam. So parentes, her parents, named her Claudia. So lots of vocabulary that you know and are comfy with. Suum maritum corde dilexit suo, natos duos creavit, horum alterum in terra linquit, areum sub terra locat. And this is where it takes quite a sad turn and we hear more about the reality of Claudia's life. She loved her husband, suum maritum, corde suo, with all her heart. So dilexi is like delectat, so she takes pleasure in, she delights in. Maritum is husband, it's where we get marital. Corde is heart, you know that from the language paper. Suum and suo, her husband, her heart. And the reason the endings have changed is because suum maritum is accusative, corde suo is ablative of means. So all of this is stuff that you know from the language paper. Natos duos creavit. So duos we know is two. We know that from just doing Latin numbers, but think about Spanish, dos. Okay, really, really familiar. Natos, children, and creavit, she created. So really similar to the English. Horum alteram in terra linquit. So one of them, she leaves, she linquit, in terra, on earth. Word you know from the language paper. Alium, the other, sub terra locat. She has placed beneath the earth. So this points out that Claudia's lost a child, and unfortunately that wouldn't necessarily be that unusual at this time. So in the ancient world, infant mortality was quite high. There wasn't as much, in terms of medical support for women, and actually having a child was a really dangerous thing. It's part of the reason that we see such an age difference quite often between the bride and the groom, the husband and the wife, and it has to do a lot with like a woman's fertility and establishing a family. Marriages weren't necessarily love matches. They were about building alliances, building a family that would be really prosperous. And it's interesting and quite sad that Claudia's sons are commemorated with her. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the effects in a little bit more detail then. So, I've popped quite a bit on the screen. We'll go through them one at a time. So it opens with direct address, and it's quite a conversational epitaph. It's not really formal, it's not speaking too much kind of in heavy language. It's like directing itself to the viewer, the person who's looking at this tomb. And it's saying, look, take the time to read this. It's really brief, but it's worth noting that this woman lived and she did this for her family. We see that backed up with the imperatives. Asta, perlage, stand still, and read it through properly. Okay, so the impression we're getting is somebody's going to be a passerby. We have litotes, so a not unbeautiful sepulchre of a beautiful woman. So litotes suggest a little bit of restraint, a little bit of modesty about the beauty of the sepulchre. Okay. We also have polyptoton. So we have the repetition of pulchrum and pulchri in different cases. It's suggesting that the tribute that's been left for Claudia is actually really suited to her. It's really befitting her as a person. And it's like an apt and suitable tribute for her. We see polyptoton again with nomen nominarunt, so the name that her parents named her, the name that they gave to her. And again, like, we could just say her name was Claudia. Like, the epitaph could absolutely say that. But the idea that she's been named by parents, it's building on that idea of her bigger family. And a theme that you'll see in Love and Marriage is the transference of women from their family home, the home with their mum and their dad, to their marital home. It's a huge part of the wedding ceremonies we'll start to look at, and it's quite a big part of the way that marriages were arranged. So it's interesting that it's highlighted here. Okay. If we look at the next part, we have in closing order. That means that suum begins the line, it also ends the line. Suum and suo, her husband and her heart. So it's like containing this idea, it's very bound up together. She loved her husband with all of her heart. That repetition suggests she's really given herself to this marriage. Okay. If we look at the second line, it says in closing order, guys. I'm so sorry, it really shouldn't. So here, we just have like a caesura, a big pause where the colon is, because creavit is in the middle of a line. So natos duos creavit, she created two sons. And there's this pause for effect in what's happened to each of them. We also have a kind of inversion in that final line. One she leaves on earth, the other she's left beneath the earth. It's not a proper chiasmus. So chiasmus would have to have A, B, B, A. So we'd have to have terra and then two things repeated and then terra again, a little bit like a sandwich. Here I've popped antimetabole. That's this kind of idea of inversion. If you're not confident with different terms for repetition, just say repetition. But we could say that this is like a way of balancing what's happened to each son. One's of the world and one has been buried. So if we look ahead at some of the artwork that you'll study on the unit, that really supports our understanding of this epitaph. So you'll see that quite a lot of the artwork you're going to study actually is from the burial of a woman. So you look at quite a few things where it's a sarcophagus, meaning it encloses her body. It's a cinerary urn or something like that. And here, one of the prescribed sources is a kind of similar funeral relief. So this is from a cremation chest, which means the woman's going to be burnt, her ashes will be here. And the inscription reads, Filerissimi, amantissimi, pientissimi, most faithful, most loving, most devoted. Okay, and it's all in the dative. So the dative case really comes into its own on tributes to the most faithful, to the most loving, to the most devoted. Okay. And it's really kind of echoing all of the positivity we've seen about Claudia in the epitaph I've just explained to you. It says on the cremation chest that this lady passed away at 27 years old. That suggests her husband's possibly quite a bit older. The cause of death isn't really mentioned. There are lots of different reasons this could happen. Childbirth could be a really key one, and we talked about that when we looked at the sons of Claudia. On the right and left hand side of the married couple here, there are actually two burning torches. So again, the lady is being commemorated for her role as a wife, and we have these torches to remind us of the Roman wedding ceremony. And it's to invoke the goddess of fertility. So again, like the cause for death is uncertain, but it's quite clear that marriage is really bound up with the idea of family, the idea of being a good wife and being a good mother. And all of these themes come through in the different sources that we look at. Okay, I hope that was helpful for you. In the description, I've linked to some helpful resources. I'm going to release videos on everything in this topic, so we'll have a full playlist. So feel free to pause, take notes, try and apply it to some essay questions for your revision. Thanks.